Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to our webinar, 3 Mistakes That Make the Golden Years Not So Golden. This afternoon, joining me is the Village Plan and ELG Estate Planning representatives. From Village Plan, we have the licensed independent clinical social worker and supervisor of care management and counseling. From Village Plan, Jennifer Nazarowski. And we also have with us founder and managing partner of ELG Estate Planning in Spokane, Lynn St. Louis. So welcome, ladies. My name is Reverend Janet Lee Craft. I am the author of Leaving Lightly, Getting Your Affairs in Order So All You Leave Behind Is Love, which is an end-of-life educational program. So we've got a wonderful program designed for you today. We are going to talk about some challenges that seniors face, that all of us face as we age. You know, we say that we are older and wiser, but that does not mean that life gets easier once we age. In fact, as anybody aging knows, it gets harder as we age. Seniors face a lot of challenges, and we're not going to address all of them, but we are going to address about 3 different challenges that seniors face. And the mistakes come in when we don't plan for these, when we hide our heads in the sand and don't do anything to address them. That's when the mistakes get really large. So we're going to bring these mistakes to our awareness, these challenges to our awareness today, and see what we can do about them and see how we can plan ahead. Okay. So the first obstacle that seniors face, and it's a very serious one, is related to diminished physical capacity. And often that shows up as a loss of mobility, leading to a loss of independence. It can come on quite suddenly, or it can come on very gradually. And that's a loss. It's harder to walk, to navigate stairs, to get in and out of vehicles, to do the things you used to be able to do. And eventually you may have to give up driving and lose your independence. And every person facing that experiences a lot of fear and a lot of stress as they begin to see the effects of the loss of mobility. And so I'm going to ask Jennifer Nazarowski 2 things. First, I'm going to ask you, Jen, do you please explain what Village Plan is and how can Village Plan address this loss of mobility and loss of independence issue, particularly talking about how are they going to address it physically? How can Village Plan help them address it physically and emotionally and mentally and very practically? So I've given you a lot on your plate, Jen. Can you explain a little bit about this?
Yes, happy to. I'm happy to be here today. So Village Plan was originally started by an RN, couple different RNs, and with the whole goal of providing the level of support, guidance, navigation through healthcare systems, mobility, health challenges, just that whole gauntlet that, you know, especially when you come out of the hospital or a child, you know, facing a new challenging diagnosis, or as Jan so eloquently put it there of, you know, sometimes it's just the real life of aging. There's more falls, there's dizziness, there's all kinds of things that are going to create challenges for safe mobility. So Village Plan offers home care. So it would be familiar as caregivers, you know, in wherever you're living, if it's, you know, in your own home, in a senior living community, maybe with an adult child, wherever you're at, we'll meet you there and help support that level of independence that you need. Caregiving is your, you know, day-to-day kind of care needs. So dressing, eating, mobility, showers, meds, all that kind of good stuff. And then another service we provide at Village Plan is care management. And care management is getting to be a little bit more known across the nation, but really what that is experts in the healthcare arena. And we really take the role of advocating for you, the client, or whoever your loved one is that needs the assistance, and advocating with doctors, advocating with other family members, advocating with wherever you're living, of figuring out what's going on and how do we help that family, that client, walk through those obstacles. And that usually starts with a comprehensive, what we call plan of care, where we come, most of our care managers, as long as you're comfortable with it, come right to your home, wherever you're living, and do that really comprehensive look into, because sometimes our lens is a little different than the client or loved ones around. And so we'll take a look, get medical records, look around the home setting, see if there's any obvious kind of provisions that need to be changed, grab bars, moving rugs, are there changes, ramps, are there changes that can keep you where you're at, keep you safer there? And then a second part of that is, like I said, getting medical records, looking through. We have a medical director on our staff who will take a look through your medical records and see, is there something that's obvious to a geriatrician rather than just a normal, internal medicine provider. Another thing we really are special here is we take that whole look of all the providers, not just from the primary care provider, but your cardiologist, your neurologist, your oncologist, all the different providers, and help them, and all of you present with a full comprehensive picture of what's going on, and give suggestions and recommendations along the way. But also, to Janet's point, is we definitely are also paying attention to that emotional, spiritual side of everyone involved. We understand that any health challenges or changes can be really challenging emotionally. They can take a toll, physically, spiritually, emotionally, the whole part here. And so we're taking note. We're going to offer that support. We do have licensed counseling at Village Plan, and that's for anyone who needs it, right? So if it's the client maybe dealing with a new diagnosis or even a new dementia disorder, we can meet them where they are. Or a lot of times our counseling and our support is for caregivers around that loved one. So that's a little bit about Village Plan. Any more you needed from me, Jan, there?
Well, you just mentioned support of caregivers, and that is so critical. And I think any one of us who has had a loved one, be it friend or parent or sibling, who has dealing with dementia or any kind of debilitating illness, they need a lot of support, and often they don't get it. They're being really drained. So am I understanding correctly, Jennifer, that part of when someone takes advantage of your services, then do the caregivers also have access to therapy? I guess that's the question. Can you give them therapy too? How do you help? The question is, how do you help the caregivers?
Yeah, that's a great question. So yes, to answer that question, yes. Our services are definitely, when we say holistic centered, client centered, they are. We are a private pay agency. So when you enroll as a Village Plan client, you have access to all of the services that we provide. You don't have to use them all. They can be a la carte, but so we call ourselves a three-legged stool. So we offer in-home caregivers support, or caregivers, and then care management and licensed counseling. So 3 different parts of a triangle. They're all available to you. Anyone can use them, so it doesn't have to be just the client we're serving. If it's an adult daughter helping, or a spouse helping, or maybe the client themselves who has, let's say, late stage cancer diagnosis, but it's the spouse that's really suffering, we could definitely just do counseling with the spouse. So it's very much whoever is needing whatever service is who, and we can help all of it.
So obviously you're tailoring each client's needs and they can take advantage. I like the a la carte idea. I need this, but I don't really need this. So that much is good. And I want to ask you, since we're talking about mobility, giving up your driver's license, that's a big one. Or even just coming upon the fact that, especially now I'm in my mid 60s, right? I'm starting to come upon the fact that my driving is becoming to be affected. I don't want to admit that. Anybody, no one wants to admit that, oh gosh, my driving is becoming affected.
No.
But when you have a client and obviously they're having issues and trouble and nobody wants to give up their license, and now that's become a big issue. So the issue is both, giving up your license, which is we equate with our independence, and also how do we get around if we're not driving? Buses will only take you so far. So do you help the clients, A, come to grips with the fact that they have to give up their license, and how do you do that? And B, do you say, well, there's Uber. Let me show you how to take an Uber. How do you manage that?
Magic, that's how. No, I'm just kidding. So, no, you're absolutely right. And when I say we're experts in this aging arena, that is definitely a part of it, right? Is our goal, as anyone else, is as much preventive kind of work as possible, getting to be a part of, we call it like an external treatment team. So building that trust, many times we're called when there's a crisis, or, dad does have the car and he's gotten lost 3 times in the last 2 weeks, and oh my God, what do we do? And that's many times where we'll get our phone calls, and we definitely do come in those crisis situations and provide that support. Sometimes, having a third party, non-biased clinician being part of this team, the dad in this situation isn't as bothered when we come in and do an assessment and say, hey, let's really look at this, and it's not safe to drive. And it's not as emotional as if their daughter or son is telling them, you can't drive anymore, dad. So, and there's plenty of therapeutic ways we go about that, but many, many times what a family member is facing in those challenging conversations can be incredibly different when you bring in a third-party clinician. And this is what we do, right? So we have lots and lots of tips and suggestions, and let's try this, or let's try that, and so it does, we are very comfortable. It's never fun having those really difficult independence kind of discussions, but we absolutely do it on a very normal basis, and happy to support any and everyone that's involved in that.
So it sounds like you help seniors make a more smooth transition between being an adult and you have your life and you have your independence, and slowly, then things are changing, and it's hard to face the changes. It's very fearful to face the changes and stressful. So it sounds like you kind of provide that smooth transition from, yes, I know this is what your life used to be, but now we need to make some adjustments because this life is different now, Right. So it sounds, I trust you. It sounds like a very easier way to go about making this transition.
And many times, honestly, the transition's rough. There's no way to sugarcoat it completely, but sometimes it's just validating, like, hey, this is really normal. Here's what to expect, the next steps. Let's maintain as much dignity and independence as possible, right? So laying out those really real options and ways to get to those steps really can help with that transition, because you're right, no one loves it. Many times it comes with also a ton of aches and pains, right? It's not just not only can I not drive, but I also can't really see, so it's very wrought with a lot of just rough kind of things. So just really walking that journey with them. And
comfort is comfort. Yeah, I love that, having someone to validate your experiences, because life does get very challenging. And as long as you've got someone to walk that journey with you who can validate that, yeah, this is not fun. This is not fun, but here's what you can expect, and it's totally normal, and I'm here to help you with each step. That means a lot. That means a lot. So anyways, thank you. Thank you, Jennifer, for talking about the mobility issues. So the second issue that we're going to be talking about are the legal issues. And one of the mistakes that people make when it comes to their legal issues is ignoring it. It's a big mistake, because aging is inevitable, and you created a life, and now you've got to do something with that life. And either you have a say in what happens, or the state will have a say in what happens, and that's not really what you want. So one of the problems about in the aging, as it relates to your legal issues, a lot of seniors, probably all of us, have the fear of outliving our money. And especially if you're counting on Medicaid to be a part of your long-term care plan, you are bound by the Medicaid spend down rules, and that could lead to impoverishment for yourself and for your loved ones, for your heirs. Sounds like a really challenging way to go. Does it have to be that way? The answer is no, it doesn't have to be that way. A good estate plan can go a long way in mitigating that. So Attorney Lynn St. Louis from ELG Estate Planning, your specialty is estate plans and elder law. So Lynn, can you tell us a little bit about how a good estate plan can prevent impoverishment?
Thank you, Jan. I would be happy to. And as you know, I love to talk, so I'm going to try not to talk too much. I do want to say something. This is about, the 3 mistakes that make your golden years not so golden. And Jennifer, thank you so much for, talking about Village Plan and the services that you offer. When people age, the concern is not just financial, but it's losing their independence, their autonomy, losing control. And as I'm an elder law attorney, I'm an estate planning attorney, and how I came to this was through really dealing with long-term care. My parents, we had 14 years of long-term care, and for my dad, that was from 2002 through 2010, high-level care in our living room. So he never went to an adult family home or a skilled nursing facility. And when Jennifer was talking about support that she provides, a Village Plan provides to the caregiver spouse, I know firsthand how important that is. My mom, who was a caregiver spouse, actually suffered a devastating stroke in 2010, very much related to all the caregiving burden she had, even with all the support she had. So, we're talking about this, but I want to share how personal it is that, I've been there. I know Jennifer has been there. I know Jan has been there. We've traveled this journey of assisting folks as they age. And one of the things that I learned when I first started was it's overwhelming. What do you do? Who do you talk to? What are you supposed to do? I was the attorney adult child of 2 aging parents. So, I was going to figure that out. One of the things that I learned was before Village Plan, there was Family First Senior Care. And before that, Nancy Dowdy. And if she ever hears this, a shout out to her. She was a geriatric care manager who was just so important to helping us, me and my parents, on our journey to making the care situation one that really was good care, good quality care. But boy, we sure learned a lot and sure appreciated all the services that the geriatric care manager provided. I say geriatric, I know they've rebranded because nobody likes to be called geriatric anything, but really valuable services. So if you are facing any kind of long-term care issues or concerns, reaching out to Village Plan, reaching out to certified care managers is a great place to start. I'm an estate planning and elder law attorney. You can also start with us because an elder law attorney is someone who knows not just estate planning, but is familiar and really understands everything else that goes with the loss of autonomy, capacity, diminishment, all of those things that nobody wants. And, hopefully some people won't ever experience that. Most people will experience some sort of decline. And what we try to do is to keep you in control as much as we possibly can. Now, Jennifer explained how Village Plan can help support that person who needs care in their family. What an elder law attorney does is very similar, but from the perspective of what our expertise is, which isn't the care management, but the legal part of it. So that's what I'm going to talk about. How do you keep control over your life when it comes to the legal perspective? So what I wanted to point out was a lot of people don't want to go see a lawyer for whatever reason. Bad experience with a lawyer, or stereotypes about a lawyer. I have to tell you, elder law attorneys are much nicer than other lawyers. Having said that, though, what we're really looking at is the holistic approach to how we make your life better, your future better. People put off estate planning. Why is that? Well, because you don't have to do any estate planning ever in your life. Why? Why don't you have to do an estate plan? Well, everybody needs an estate plan, and because everyone needs one, if you yourself haven't chosen your own estate plan, guess what? The state has chosen one for you. And people are surprised by that. They go, what do you mean the state has an estate plan for me? I didn't think I needed an estate plan, so I just didn't do anything. The estate has an estate plan? Let me explain how that works. If you don't do your own estate plan, what happens when you die? Well, the state has a dispositive plan, a will, so to speak, for you. Your assets will go where the state says they will go. And that may or may not be what you would have wanted. But surprise, the state has rules for what happens when you die if you haven't put a plan into place. It might not be what you want. What about if you lose the ability to manage your own affairs while you're alive and you haven't put into place your estate plan with the necessary documents like your durable powers of attorney? What happens then if you can't make your own decisions? The state has a plan, and that plan is you will become a ward of the state under a court-ordered guardianship or conservatorship. And that means somebody else is in charge of your affairs, maybe somebody that you've never even met, at your cost. You pay for it, and you have nothing to say over what is happening. So that is the complete opposite of what we want to see, what anybody wants to see. You don't want to be in a position where you have absolutely no control over what has happened in your life. So how do you prevent that from happening? Take the step of doing an estate plan. And I really encourage you to talk to somebody who has that expertise and knowledge about not just estate planning for the general population, but estate planning as it may impact somebody who is retired, who is a senior, who has more concerns about long-term care costs, because that's the type of, when you go to somebody who has that kind of knowledge, you're going to see a much different outcome in terms of the protections you have. So I know I just talked a whole lot about that. Jan, feel free to jump in with any questions, but I am really, really passionate about somebody who, about people using the advocates who are there for them, not just the lawyer, but the care manager, and makes an incredible difference in the outcome of people's lives. So if that's the one takeaway from today, good. I've accomplished what I wanted you to take away, was use these people who are advocates, care managers and lawyers.
Now, Lynn, I think actually you just answered a question that we had come in the chat, which was how can someone be proactive rather than reactive? in dealing with the concerns of aging. And what you just said, as I heard it, was that to be able to take advantage of the opportunities that are there for you now. So you don't have to wait until you have diminished capacity or you're dying. A lot of people think you have to wait until you're dying before making an estate plan. And you're saying, no, that's not it. Make it now while you still have capacity.
Jen, you don't want to wait until then. If you wait till you die, well, that's too late, right? Okay, wait until you have diminished capacity. Well, you're not going to be making the best decisions, most likely. And what if you've waited too long? If you wait too long that you don't have what's called legal capacity, you cannot do any estate planning documents. So there is this is kind of the interesting part. There's really no urgency until something happens. But for people who are like me, I am a planner. I do everything I can to protect myself, my family, my assets, those in my life, those whom I love, and all the community that we serve. That's why ELG does what we do. Is we want to reach as many people as we can to make sure they have the protections in place. And frankly, people don't even know what those protections are. And that's why I want to share that information as to what can people do.
Well, Lynn, that's my question to you. What can people do? You talk about estate plan, but a lot of people don't know. It's a nebulous term, estate plan. What is an estate plan really? What does it entail?
Okay, well, I've already told you what the state's estate plan is for you, but let's put that aside because that's not what you want. So an estate plan is a legal, so think of it from a legal structure. Okay, well, that doesn't help much. Let's talk about what it consists of. I can tell you general overall, an estate plan is what you do, what legal documents you put into place to make sure that your voice will always be heard, no matter what happens to you. Even if you can't speak, somebody else will speak for you, that your assets are protected and that somebody can manage them in a way that you would if you could, but you can't because you've lost capacity. And upon your death, that you provide for your loved ones, for your spouse, for your kids, for your pets, and that you don't pay unnecessary taxes. Everything that, if you're looking at an ideal world, well, that's what an estate plan can do for you. So let me break it down a little bit. What needs to be in an estate plan? I believe the most important documents you need are your durable powers of attorney. The durable powers of attorney are the documents that you sign that says, if I can't make decisions, well, then I'm going to count on my husband to be making those decisions for me, or my daughter, or my son, or somebody that I trust to make really good decisions for me because I can't. I need somebody to step into my shoes and do that. They have a fiduciary obligation to carry out my wishes, and I know them, I trust them, and so I give them authority to do what I would do. If you heard me say my husband, you might think, well, I'm married, why would I need to give my spouse any authority? He's already on the joint checking account or this or that. Well, it comes as a surprise to people that your spouse is not legally authorized to do a lot of stuff for you. Think about your credit card. Have you ever called on your spouse's credit card and they say, oh, please put the other person on the phone? Or more importantly, what if you had to sell your house, but you can't because you've lost capacity? Your spouse wants to sell the house. You don't have a durable power of attorney. Both names are on the deed. What happens? Court-ordered guardianship if you don't have a durable power of attorney, even though it's because somebody has to have legal authority to sign on your behalf. And without a durable power of attorney for finances, nobody has legal authority. When it comes to durable powers of attorney for health care, the state does have a hierarchy of who can make decisions for you, and that's out of necessity, that they need to have somebody who can speak for you. But why wouldn't you want to appoint the person that you want to speak for you, not what the state hierarchy is? So that's why I say that the durable powers of attorney are the most important of the estate planning documents you can have. They're not the only ones, but I believe that they're the most important ones, and they're essential for any estate plan.
And they're two, to be clear, they are two separate documents, the healthcare power of attorney and the durable power of attorney for finances. They're two separate documents.
They
and
don't have to be, Jan.
Okay.
We at ELG Estate Planning do separate documents. Our documents are very comprehensive, very robust. And so because of that, and because you might want to name somebody who's different to be your financial attorney, in fact, or your healthcare agent, we find it works much better. Now, to be legally acceptable, do they have to be two separate documents? No. You can find a 2-page durable power of attorney that speaks to both finances and health, and it is something that is a legally effective, a legally accepted document. Whether or not it's effective depends on what you're trying to do with it. So and how do you know? That's why talking to somebody who would be familiar with, well, how would this document work? Talk to the lawyer about, well, why do you have a 12 or 15-page financial power of attorney and a similar healthcare? Why do you have all that language in there? There's a reason for all the language in these documents. What those reasons are, that's where the attorney comes in to explain, well, this is why you would want this particular provision. For example, in our financial powers of attorney, we include gifting authority for Medicaid qualification purposes. Well, why do we do that? Well, frankly, we understand long-term care, we understand Medicaid benefits, Medicaid rules, and you had mentioned something about Medicaid spend down. Not necessarily so. When you work with an elder law firm such as ours, we understand Medicaid asset preservation strategies. So many times we help clients keep all of their assets, no spend down, yet qualify for Medicaid. That's why we will have certain provisions in our powers of attorney that other estate planning lawyers won't have because of their lack of familiarity with the Medicaid program.
So the durable powers, the powers of attorney that covers your health care and that covers your finances are very critical documents. Someone in the chat also mentions a PLLC document. You know what that is, the physician's order for life-sustaining treatment, I believe. Would you just comment on that for a minute, Lynn, as to what that document is and when that comes into play?
I'll comment on it real quick, and then I'm going to throw it over to you, Jennifer, because it is a medical document, not a legal document. It's that lime green one you see posted on people's fridges, and it's typically to tell first responders, hey, don't resuscitate me or attempt to do it. So Jennifer, maybe if you could add a little bit about what the PLLC form is, because that's a medical form.
Absolutely. So as Lynn just said there, it's the very traditionally bright, it's, sometimes changes colors, but right now it's lime green, and it is that really emergency and can follow through, but what are those immediate wishes? So any EMS, your emergency, services, when they come in, if they find you down or, there's an emergency situation, that's the first question. Is there a PLLC? That's going to tell them, do you want CPR? Do you want life-enhancing, life-sustaining treatment? And then we go from there. But that form has to be filled out with a medical provider, so a doctor. Generally, we suggest you do that with your primary care doctor because they know you best, but that has to be signed by a doctor. Just stating that you understand what that means. What are the risks and benefits of the different categories? That's a little bit about a PLLC, yes.
And what happens if there's like a do not resuscitate order on the post and it's posted on the fridge and the EMTs come because someone's had a heart attack and the EMT says do not resuscitate and the hysterical spouse in the room is going, do CPR. What happens when the family's wishes differ from the client's wishes, the patient's wishes?
To Lynn's point, that's the importance of having these documents and these processes in place. Is if there is a green PLLC form right there that is the same name, they will honor your wishes, you meaning the person on the ground, and that goes forward in any of these documents that Lynn is talking about, your durable power of attorney for healthcare or finances. If it is legally appropriate and everything is done correctly, we will always, it is our obligation to stand by those. So that, if you really, really care about not being resuscitated, that form has to be in place. Or medical, even if your spouse is standing there talking to the EMS saying, no, he doesn't want to be resuscitated, they cannot honor that. It has to be in writing, because we can't prove that, right? So it goes both ways.
To be clear, the PULSE form is really the only form that the emergency responders are going to look at. They don't care about that durable power or the advanced directive living will, which specifically states your wishes in the event you're at end of life, etc. That's too much. There's just too much information there. That's why it is a very clear document at the very start. It says DNAR, which means do not attempt resuscitation. Only in the event that the emergency responder sees that will they honor that request. Otherwise, it's their legal obligation to try to resuscitate. So somebody asked, well, where do you put it? That's why I mentioned you put it on the refrigerator. I saw somebody had it on the side of the fridge, and I go, do you want them to see it? The side isn't necessarily going to grab their attention. The front of the refrigerator is where you do usually see pulsed forms.
And I would imagine that's where the firemen or the paramedics, they know to look at that. They know to look at the fridge and see if there's a line green document first thing.
Yep.
Very good. Very good. All right. Excellent. So Lynn, we've talked a little bit about the directives for healthcare and for finances and PULSE. And all these things are documents that come into play while you're still alive. Can you talk a little bit about what documents you need once you pass?
Right. So when you die, I said the state has a plan for you unless you have a different plan. Which you likely want a different plan than what the state's plan is. So what legal documents do you need? Everybody's heard about a will. Everybody knows what a will does. It passes your assets when you're gone to whomever you want to receive them. Another dispositive type of legal document is called a revocable living trust. It does the same thing. It says, hey, when I'm gone, where does everything go? Each document has its own benefits and its own downside. Which is right for you really depends on what your particular circumstances are. Let me talk about a revocable living trust first. Let's say that you are single, you have property here in Washington and Idaho and maybe elsewhere in another state. You might want to have a revocable living trust. What do you have to do? You have to put the title of all your properties and all your bank accounts have to be retitled into the trust. And you are probably your own trustee, then you appoint a successor trustee. And when you die, the revocable living trust is supposed to operate such that the next people to inherit from you, and they do so without any help. By that, I mean, you don't even need to talk to a lawyer. You don't need to go to court. You don't need a probate. That's why everybody likes revocable living trusts so much. The problem with revocable living trusts is since they never go get any assistance, guidance from a lawyer or anybody because people don't want to pay for it, they get messed up all the time and it doesn't work like it's supposed to. And because of that, then the lawyer has to get involved at some point, and the legal fees are much more than if people had simply received guidance. But theoretically, a revocable living trust can work well. Why people prefer revocable living trust to wills is that a will often will require that there be a probate. And all of us have heard, oh, probate, avoid it at all costs. If you hear about a probate, why did you hear about it? Because it was a probate gone bad, or an estate plan that was bad. So probate has a really bad name. What I encourage people to do is if somebody says, well, you need to probate your estate, ask the question, well, why is that? What benefit is that? We often set up people's estate plans with a will, but with no intent to probate. You have the will as kind of the safety net, but we can set up somebody's estate plan that their house pays on death to their son, their bank account to their daughter, their 401k divided between the two of them. There's all sorts of ways that we can avoid probate without a revocable living trust. And it accomplishes the client's goals without the need for probate, because it really is set up to be automatic. Think about your life insurance policies or your IRAs or 401k. They have on them something called the beneficiary designation. If they don't, they should. And it says, where does it go when you're gone? You actually can do that with your house. It's called a transfer on death deed. You have to do the deed while you are alive, but if you do it correctly, usually you'll want to see a lawyer, then on your death, your house automatically goes wherever you said you wanted it to go. So that might be a really good option for people, much better than the state's plan. I do want to talk about, though, why probate might be a really good idea. And that has to do with protecting assets against long-term care costs and allowing the surviving spouse to qualify for Medicaid. Wills in our state, in Washington state, if you have a will that contains a special kind of trust, an asset protection trust, on your death, let's say husband and wife, husband dies, let's say it's $1 million estate, husband dies, his share of the estate or half, $500,000, through his will go into a trust, supplemental needs asset protection trust for a surviving spouse. That requires a probate, and the probate will cost money and will take time, but a good estate plan doesn't have a lot of costs associated with the probate. It's a pretty simple process, though it's all statutorily mandated how it works. But why am I talking about having a probate? Well, you've got $1 million estate, husband dies, his $500,000 goes into a trust for his surviving spouse, wife. She has Alzheimer's. She needs to be in a care facility. She has in her own name, her own half of her estate, $500,000 that she will need to spend down, yes, for Medicaid, absent other planning. And that will cover private pay at the memory care facility and this and that. But after her money is down, she applies for Medicaid, not her, remember she has Alzheimer's, her attorney, in fact, under her durable power of attorney, applies for Medicaid for her. She has not just her own bank account with $2,000, she's got $500,000 in trust that benefits her, and she qualifies for Medicaid. If you know anything about Medicaid's rules, a single person can only have $2,000 in other non-countable assets. But money in a trust, shouldn't that count? Shouldn't $500,000 count against her? It does not. So a will with an asset protection trust allows a couple to ensure that the survivor of them will never become impoverished, because the survivor will always have that nest egg, the decedent's share of their joint estate. She qualifies for Medicaid with $500,000 in a trust. And why that's so important? Yeah, Medicaid is paying for her long-term care costs, but that extra money is used to make her life that much better. Does she need somebody? Does she need a care manager? Does she need somebody to sit with her? There's so many things that can be done with that money to ensure that her quality of life will be the best. This is something, this will with a Medicaid asset protection trust in it, and the benefit of a probate is something that most people don't understand. And that's why I want to share that with you, because by taking those steps while you're both alive, your outcome is going to be so much better.
So I think, Lynn, the takeaway, just what you were saying, of so many of us don't understand it, because you're talking about legal documents, legal strategies, and we haven't been trained in all that, and so we don't understand it. But I think the takeaway is you have been trained in this, you do understand it. It takes an estate planning and or elder law attorney to be able to talk about this and create these strategies. And not all attorneys are created equal, just like not all physicians are created equal, or not all anybody's created equal. So finding a trusted, a competent attorney to guide you through the process is a really important piece. And as we were talking with Jennifer, what came about with the Village Plan as well is that each person is unique, and their family dynamics are unique. And so tailoring the needs of the family is what these specialists do. It's what Village Plan does. They create a plan for the family's needs, in the same way that an estate planning and elder law attorney would create a plan based on this person and his family's needs and everything. So it's not a cookie cutter thing. I know a lot of people will download documents from the internet, and you can do that, certainly download these documents for the internet for free or for a modest price. But that does not address all of these nuances and all of these strategies, legal strategies, that your family might be able to take advantage of or want to know about. And that's why taking the time and spending the money to consult with a qualified estate planning and elder law attorney is so critical right now while you're still at full capacity and you can make these decisions. Is that a fair takeaway?
Yeah, I would agree. You know, even an estate planning lawyer, what you have to, this is the question. If you're looking for an attorney and you have concerns about long-term care costs, and you have a concern that there's going to be enough money there to pay for you or your spouse, seek out not just an estate planning lawyer, but an elder law attorney, and one who is knowledgeable about Medicaid's rules and the benefits. And because that is a subcategory niche within even elder law, which is within estate planning. So just like you wouldn't go to a general practitioner for your rotator cuff surgery, you really want to find somebody who has done what the area where you have a concern. If you have a concern about long-term care costs, you know, seek out someone who is knowledgeable about what the state benefits are. I do want to point out, somebody has a question here. It's a great question. Do the rules apply to veterans benefits? That's a whole different area of government benefits, not within what I was just talking about. Those rules are different. Supplemental needs trust from a will might not be honored by the Veterans Administration. So that's a whole different area of inquiry, is what about VA benefits? So yeah, whatever you're most interested in, you know, ask the attorney. I do want to mention, Jennifer, if you could speak to the certification for what used to be called geriatric care managers, because, and I think it's important that people be aware of the difference between private pay versus placement pay.
Yeah, no problem. I want to give a plug just to Lynn here, really what she's saying. And as a geriatric or professional care manager, whatever title you want to hold for that moment, but when we get involved with a family, it's always one of our first questions is, have you met with an elder law attorney? And it's incredibly different than just oh, we have a family attorney, or, oh, I have an estate planner or my financial planner. It's a very different experience when you work with an elder law attorney who understands, like she's saying, these nuances and gives you those preparations, and here's what to look for, here's what is available, and let's look at the realistic long term. So thank you, Lynn, for all the beautiful work that you do. That presentation was, you know, so great and breaking it down. But as to Dan's point, each and every person is so individual, and it's incredibly important to have someone who understands what that looks like as you age. Back to that question though, for certification for a geriatric care manager is, there are organizations across the nation. The one that Village Plan is a part of is Aging Life Care of America, or association, and that really holds a standard. So all of our care managers are at the same expertise level. So meaning we pass a an exam to be a certified care manager. It's showing that we have the adequate experience that gives you that knowledge base for care management going forward. And a little difference between a private paid care manager and a placement agency, big differences here are, as a care manager, our role and our obligation and our loyalty here is to you, the client, whoever we're working with. So we're looking at that whole picture. If placement is what you need, if your loved one or yourself is needing an assisted living or an adult family home or a memory care unit, we're going to give you the broad look. Like here's what the options are in your area, or if you're wanting to move closer to a loved one. And here's the pros and cons. We do not get any kickbacks or there's no benefit to us for any place that we suggest to you, because you're our client. We're not working hand in hand with a memory care facility that if I place this client, you will get a certain amount, as a provider back from that. So that's a benefit there, because guess what? Our goal is to keep you healthy, well, happy, not, necessarily promoting one location over another. Is that helpful?
Yeah, I think that's really important, because people don't understand. I mean, they think, well, what's the difference? If I don't have to pay any money, why not go with the private service? And so I do thank you for sharing that you're the advocate for
Correct.
the client. And, I'm a lawyer. A lawyer by definition is an advocate. So, having advocates on your team, I think, is what's really important for the clients to understand.
Mm-hmm.
So, Jan, I know we're coming to the end. We've got like only 10 minutes left, but I do want to answer this question. Somebody asked a really good question, yes, which is, should consumers seek elder law and estate planning attorneys in the state in which they or their elderly parents reside? Are the laws different enough that you should seek state-specific advice? Absolutely. Every state has rules that are so different when it comes to not just estate planning, elder law, Medicaid benefits. We're licensed in Washington and Idaho, so we can assist folks around here. But if you're looking in a different jurisdiction, yes, seek an attorney in that jurisdiction. National Academy of Elder Law Attorneys is a really good resource, good place to start. But yeah, it's very state specific.
And then can you also address Wesley's question about identifying a competent fiduciary to guide the creation of an estate plan?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, fiduciary, the selection of a fiduciary, especially if it's not a friend or a family member, there are a number of agencies that are very well, have very good reputations in the Seattle area. And so you could do, your research on that. I can't call out or name anybody out on this talk today, but there are definitely very good agencies to serve in a fiduciary capacity. Yes.
Would a Google search help him there with that?
Yeah.
What would he Google? What would the terms be?
Fiduciary for trust of child in Seattle. You can also call us 509-468-0551, and we'll try to give you better guidance than that.
And okay. I'd back that up. We're not going to promote one or more over, but what we can tell you is very honestly, this is how they work with us, because we do work with a lot of clients that have a trust or a fiduciary, and what we could offer, especially, and we do this a lot, is here's our experiences. This one is incredibly communicative, or, just those kinds of referrals.
Excellent. Excellent. So yes, we are coming close to the end of our time, and we still have one more mistake we want to avoid, which is how do we successfully deal with difficult family dynamics? Because every family's got at least one person in there who is very opinionated, and they want what they want regardless of what you want, and we've all dealt with that as professionals. So Jennifer, I'm going to start with you. How does Village Plan deal with challenging family dynamics?
Yeah, it's that, I think, is everyone, especially if you are the family member, it's kind of a worst nightmare, right? As, man, life's already hard enough. Why do we got to fight about these things or have differing opinions, which is just a natural part of personalities and, those kind of just life dynamics. Many times, village plan, your care manager, your counselor, whoever you're working with, really is that mediator. We do a lot of not like a huge formal process unless that's what it needs to be, but there's a lot of mediation that goes through. And an example would be 5 adult children, all with very differing ideas of what care needs to look like for an older parent. And what many times we can do is we can, depending on, how much conflict's going on, but bring everyone to the same room, sit down, let everyone have a voice. Sometimes that alone can really help negate some of that conflict. Or if there's too much tension, we do a lot of times where we'll meet with each family member individually, whatever amount of time is needed, and then be that voice, really bringing it back. Let's say mom has Alzheimer's, really bringing it back to what were her wishes when she had that competency, when she was talking about what she was hopeful for and wanting, and just bringing that back up to the surface. Because that's really, at the end of the day, that's what family members want. And so sometimes it's just bringing it, letting people have a voice, bringing back that attention where it needs to be. So yeah, mediation is a big part of our role, for sure.
So it sounds like it's very important for everybody's voice to be heard, because in the end of the day, everybody just wants to be heard and understood. But in the final analysis, it's really the patient whose wishes should be honored. And we can take everyone's thoughts and opinions into consideration, but we really want to honor what the patient themselves wanted. Correct? Is that right? Okay.
Correct. And back, if we're going to pull this all back together, where when Lynn's talking about that proactive approach and really creating these estate plans and these end of life wishes before we get to those points. And that's why, right? So if you're the aging adult in this situation, it's such a gift to give to your family, to all those involved, if your wishes are laid out, because it can create a lot of differing opinions at the end. Well, mom told me this. Well, mom told me this. And well, I thought she wanted it this way. And I know she wants it this way, right? And so when we're having to navigate that without written instructions or written ideas of what was their wants and their desires, you're going to see natural tension, right? So those are some of the absolute best gifts you can give to your family members, is having that plan.
Oh, yes. The plan brings peace. It can definitely bring peace. And so, Lynn, what does an estate planning attorney do when a family comes to them and they have to take in issues of someone who could cause trouble down the line? How do you deal with that?
So as Jennifer mentioned, knowing what the person's wishes are. Well, how do you know? If it's important, put it in writing. It's one of my favorite sayings. If it's important, put it in writing, because when it is in writing, there's much less opportunity for people to say the opposite of what the writing says. So that's what estate planning does. It gives clarity. It puts in writing what the wishes are, where the assets go, who's in charge, who's speaking, all of those things. And having an estate planning firm gives the client an advocate as well. And I can tell you that when you have a lawyer involved, there's much less room for other family members to be trying to assert their influence over somebody. Not that it won't happen, but knowing that an attorney is involved really helps keep it down, the dysfunction. So, but when it comes to that mediation type setting, no, we are not the best for that. Our job is to prevent that from happening. But despite that, if there is family dysfunction and dynamics, guess what? We're referring it over to professionals who can deal with that sort of situation. And so Jennifer and Village Plan, here you go.
Very good. Very good.
We'll take the messes. That's what we specialize in.
Well, it's really wonderful that both of you specialize in different areas of senior care, and both are critically, critically important. And so the one takeaway from all of this is that the three mistakes that can make the golden years not so golden are really just not paying attention to how life changes and the needs that you have as you age. So whether we're talking about diminished physical capacity and what that means, it means taking a look as you see it happening, or even before it starts happening, be active and line up a series of strategies and support for yourself that can help you as these changes occur before they occur. And if it occurs, and with your legal documents, as Lynn's been beautifully saying all along, you must do it now, not when you are in a diminished capacity or you're dead. That's too late. Get everything together now, that the documents that will guide you as you, while you're alive, in your medical care and your financial care, and also after you pass. So sitting down with a qualified elder law and estate planning attorney to put that in place is a very important proactive first step in alleviating any problems later on. And in helping with, as Jennifer was beautifully saying, family dynamics, everybody's got an opinion. So, and as Lynn was saying, put it in writing. Bring everybody to the table and talk about it, but put your wishes in writing so that, and I can say from personal experience, you may think you've got a peaceful family, but nothing brings out stress in people and nothing brings out the worst in people as illness and death. So you can head that off right now by putting a plan in place, both a plan for your care through someone like Village Plan, or putting a plan in case for your legal documents, such as through ELG estate planning. So being proactive now with issues that you know will occur or could likely occur later is the best way that you can prevent mistakes from happening. And so your golden years, we want them to be shiny. So let's make them shiny by taking steps now. So I thank very much Jennifer Nazarowski from Village Plan and Lynn St. Louis from ELG Estate Planning. My name is Janet Kraft. Thank you for joining us. It's been a pleasure having you with us. If you want to reach us, we'll be sending out an email after this to let you know how you can get in touch with us. Thanks so much, and bye-bye.